Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm John.
I'm Linda.
Charles.
I'm Seth.
I'm Jenna.
And today we have an old friend of the show, Stu Burns, back with us. Stu's kind of our resident expert on folklore type stuff, especially when it comes to vampires and other areas of mystery and intrigue. So, Stu, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you back for another October Halloween episode. And I guess we thought we'd kick off the show by going over maybe a kind of a brief list of some of the area venues that are open this Halloween. If you're looking to get some fright time in, you might want to visit some of these attractions. So,
and we should say Omaha area venues if you aren't familiar with the show.
Right. And we do have some that are down in Lincoln as well. So anyway, let's go ahead and kick that off. So we've got Vala's. We mentioned that Vala's Pumpkin Patch is open, and that's a big, huge attraction. So,
Especially got little ones.
Yep. Keep in mind when you're going to these, continue to exercise social distancing and preferably wear face masks if possible to protect yourselves. So Vala's is a great place for the whole family to go. They've got just an endless number of attractions there to keep you entertained. You'd spend hours there easily. And then,
or you can also get a camp or like one of their little fire
bonfire
areas. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you don't have if you're in an apartment but you want to have a fire pit night or a fire night, you can reserve your spot there, and they provide the wood, and it's really nice. We do that almost every year.
And while we're talking about bonfires, maybe Stu knows this, where that term originated from.
Bonfires? Well, I don't know about bonfire. I know they used to use the term need fire in James Frazier's The Golden Bough, where it was really he theorized it was an imitation of the sun at night, and it would keep bad things away and so forth.
I like mead fire because I would hope it would involve mead.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that it was coined. It came from bone fire. Bone fire.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that's where it kind of evolved into bonfire. But it was a thing that was done typically in the fall, and it was a way for people to kind of say goodbye to those that had died the previous year and to kind of cast off those shadows and protect them as they're heading into the darkest nights of the winter. And so they would have these bonfires, and they would cast these bones of ancestors or whatever into them. And it was their way of saying goodbye and sending them on their journey with the flame and everything, so that they wouldn't be haunted by them during the darkest nights of winter. So kind of an interesting story. Don't know if that's true or not, but
I'm Googling it. It looks like that's dead on there, Bill. That's fantastic.
The
Nice.
Macmillan Dictionary confirms.
Ah, excellent.
It's a Middle English word.
Nice. All right.
Good
So
job,
there
Bill.
you go. So
It's not fake news.
yeah. So start your bonfires and get ready for the longest, darkest night of our lives. If you believe the scientists, which I tend to believe. So anyway, so then we have, in addition to Vala's, we have Ranch of Terror is open. Scary Acres, Camp Fear, Hillside Horror. Let's see what else we got.
As a high note on the Ranch of Terror, if
Yeah.
people are really trying to avoid internal, like haunted houses, but still have the experience, they have hayrack rides. So you get to stay in the open air if that's more comfortable for people trying to play it COVID safe.
Also, the corn mazes would probably be pretty good this year.
Yep. I know Scary Acres has a corn maze.
We should probably mention Scary Acres. That's always a lot of fun. They usually have those open area bonfires there as well. And let's see, what else?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's some pretty creepy stuff there.
Okay.
And then we got Haunted Hollow. I understand Mystery Manor is closed, right?
That is correct.
Mystery Manor is closed. Let's see.
Even the ghosts don't want COVID.
Right. Hillside Horror. And where's that located, Jenna? Hillside Horror, is that in Iowa?
Yep, Glenwood, Iowa.
Glenwood, okay. And Ranch of Terror. Let's see, what's Linda bring? Oh, there's Hillside House of Hell.
Ooh, the sacrifice.
Looks like a lot of fun. Okay.
AirIowa.com.
And let's see, Camp Fear. I'm not sure where that's located. Must be around Omaha somewhere. And
it's around Omaha. I'm not sure the exact location, but it was labeled as Omaha.
okay,
Coming as fast as I can. Hold on.
that's fine. We also have Haunted Hollow.
I mean, we can just put a list of links for our viewers in
Yeah.
the description later.
Yeah, plenty of creepy stuff out there to go see. And there's a couple of sites in Lincoln we can mention quickly, the Roca Berry Farm and Eagle Hollow Haunts. And of course, if going out and being scared out of your mind is not something that you crave, but you still like a little bit of the Halloween flavor, you can always go down to the old Omaha's Old Market and visit the Monster Club, which is a nice restaurant, good burgers, great drinks. And actually, Stu is drinking out of a glass that he got from there. They have commemorative glasses throughout the Halloween season with different creatures on them. So each week is a new creature, right? You've got last week's was Wolfman, and what's this week's, Stu?
This week's is a female vampire who I think is more or less modeled after Carol Borland in the 1935 movie Mark of the Vampire, or Elvira, as you may prefer. And then as the weeks go on, it'll be the Mummy, Frankenstein, and Dracula.
Oh,
So, yeah,
nice. The
five-
classics.
And for anyone who's not comfortable, eating out right now, which is perfectly fair, please consider just getting your to-go orders from them. Let's help keep a local business going so that when you are ready to get back out and enjoy their fun atmosphere, they're still here.
Yeah, especially a phenomenal local business. If you've never been to the Monster Club, it's really a cool place.
Mhm.
And they do have an outdoor patio there, but it is kind of small.
I can also endorse the place. One thing that they will do if you are indoors is if you request a movie to be put on, they'll put it on for you.
Oh,
That's cool.
nice.
They're showing horror movies continuously with the sound off, so every once in a while I'll go in there and request a silent film, so you're not really missing much if you don't have the sound.
Ah, nice. So they have quite a variety then?
They do, or you can bring your own in. I
Oh,
remember
that's very cool.
handing one of my requests over to the bartender, and she looks me right in the eye and says, "Is it rated R?" And I looked at it and said, "This movie was made in 1931, so probably not."
Will they not do rated R?
Pardon me?
Will they not do rated R?
They won't do. I know they won't do rated R before a certain time.
Well, there are kids in the establishment.
That does seem prudent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
There's
probably
a
means
lot of sometimes it's not the slasher horror, it's the boobies everywhere horror.
right. So that probably means the X-rated stuff is right out.
Yes, Bill, you'll have to leave that collection at home.
Nice.
Probably for the best as well.
Yes, probably. All right. Well, I think we should probably move on and talk about some of the fun stuff that's streaming this month.
Did you want to mention the Museum of Shadows though?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Tell us about that. Who knows about that best?
I know a bit about it. I haven't formally visited. I've been by one of their locations. This place has moved around quite a bit in the last 5 years or so. It was originally in Elmwood, Nebraska, and I am banned from that town, so I couldn't really visit when I went.
What did you do? Okay,
Wait,
first
there's
tell
a
us about
story
this,
here.
and then
Yes.
tell us the story of how you got banned from this town.
We'll come back to that. Let's just say it wasn't something I did, but yeah, there's a no, that's not happening. And well, it wasn't technically something I did. And then they moved to Plattsmouth, Nebraska, which was, had a historic downtown. It was probably a better fit for them. It was a newer, little bit newer building, but they assured us that it was very old and had all sorts of spectral attachments to it. But now, just this year, I think probably just before the pandemic started, they moved to probably their most appropriate home, which was targeted for the bulldozers a few years ago. And it would say it's the spec building on 1110 Douglas Street. It's that building that looks like it's just a part of where the rest of the building has been torn away. There's just one narrow portion left. It has one of the original wrought iron facades out front. It was built in 1884. So it is an historic building. There's definitely a certain historical ambiance around it. So like I said, it's their third home where they brought their artifacts, and they have some sort of a challenge where you can sit in a haunted room or room with various and sundry artifacts in it for 10 minutes. And if you can make it through, you get some sort of designation. But I haven't actually paid to enter the place yet. I'm a little squiffier on that sort of thing, but if that's the sort of thing that you enjoy, again, it's a local business, so there is that.
So it sounds like road trip material, Jenna.
Road trip.
See how that movie ends.
It ends with a nice drink at the Monster Club right down the road.
Yes, there you go.
Right around the corner.
The spooks will appreciate that.
Listen, I've spent the night in the Voliska axe murder house and was fine. I think I can handle the Museum of Shadows.
I just don't think they want you, Bill, because they don't want to listen to the puns for the rest of eternity if they take you.
I'm not sure that Bill so far hasn't earned that reputation with me. It's everyone else makes puns and then blames them on Bill.
Yes, I think Stu's gotten to the point.
No, you deserve the blame, even for puns you don't do. Somehow it's your fault, man.
There's the Voliska axe murder house.
I've been there several times. Yes.
I heard it's for sale, right?
No, I don't.
I hadn't heard that.
So.
Oh, I thought it was for sale.
Could be. She is.
So but there was an entire family. Mother and father and 5 kids were beheaded with an axe.
The mother and father, 4 of their sons, and they were hosting 2 little girls from a church program.
Right.
It was like, well, they'll stay with us. We'll get them back in the morning. And that morning, well, the neighbors noticed the animals hadn't been fed and so forth. So they called the brother, and the brother got to the place. It was locked. He got in with his key because he's his brother, and he went in and he found this scene. Huh. But the worst part of that entire story to me is that the 2 little girls' mother are like, my goodness, what's going on? Where are my daughters? Why haven't they gotten back home yet? And so she, calls the operator, because in those days you couldn't direct call. You call the operator, and they connect you to the home. Calls the operator and says, can you please ring this house? I keep forgetting the last name. And she said, oh, I can't ring that house. They've all been killed.
Oh.
That's how she found out that her daughters died.
Oh my God.
That would have been rough.
One of the leading theories is that they were sedated. And Bill's been in the house. I've been in the house. Bill, you got to realize they had to have been knocked out because there's no way that you wouldn't hear it. That house is tiny.
Real small.
So So you're saying like they think maybe there was another unknown guest that
No,
maybe
that
drugged
the
them?
guests snuck in and put like a knockout potion into their dinner,
They're well water.
and then came back later because most of them were beaten to death with an axe, the back end of an axe. So it's like, and you can't do that quietly. So
Yeah, I would somewhat disagree with that, John, just because, I mean, I'm not
you have
saying,
experience beating people to death with the backside of an axe.
well, I've got experience with that room. The mother and father slept at the top of the very top of the only stairs. It's small. It's a small house, very small house. And it's not put together real well either, by the way.
No, it's not.
As you go, the mothers and fathers slept at the very top of the stairs. And so if he would have killed them first, there's really nowhere for them to go. It's like boom, 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 you're dead. And then the four sons, who were all under the age of 10, they were all very small children, to just the left of the parents' bedrooms. So to try to get out, they would have had to have gone through this guy with an axe.
Mm-hmm.
And they're on the second floor. There's really nowhere, unless they bail out of a second floor, there's really nowhere
For them to
for
go.
boys to go.
Right.
And-
But there
and then the
were
girls
a couple of
downstairs,
kids in the downstairs bedroom, right?
Yeah, the two girls who were guests were downstairs, and possibly they could have gotten out. If the doors were locked, they may not have had any way to unlock the door.
But they wouldn't
May
have
have
been the
been-
vets. You would think they would have even tried to hide in the rooms.
Could have been. Well, and we don't know what happened that night.
Well,
Yeah.
they were laid out just flat on their backs, though. It's like it was just like they'd been sleeping. See, when you go and do the tour, there's a lady there that actually talks about the history of the house and how weird it is that they didn't seem to move. They were all laid out nicely. They could have been put in that position by the killer, but it's like a lot of mysteries.
Serial killers are known to pose their victims. There is a book out now, which I am embarrassed to say I haven't read yet, of all people. I don't know if we have any fans here or not. Bill James and his daughter. Anybody here know who Bill James is?
What else
No.
has he written?
Bill James is one of the premier writers about baseball of the last 40 years. Most of these, maybe not most of these really advanced statistics you see people throwing around baseball now, like on base percentage, wins above replacement, started with Bill James. And he and his daughter have done this book about, they have a fellow ID'd as the person they thought did the Voliska killings, and thought the same fellow who did the Hinterkaifeck killings in Germany a few years later. They can trace his movements. They think they know who the guy is. But I haven't read the book yet. You could just see seeing patterns where none exist. But
And I would challenge anyone who would think that it starts to sound too elaborate. It doesn't sound right. Read Devil in the White City about the real life events of H.H. Holmes, and I don't even think they're sure if that's even was his name. But it's about a guy who literally created a hotel of murdering, specifically to murder people in the Chicago World's Fair.
He had like a network of tunnels and peepholes and all that stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, ways
Trap
that like
doors,
he would,
yeah.
Trap doors, suffocation, gas, like ways to like quickly dispose bodies, and he would so they never caught on to what he was building. He would like feign getting angry at a contractor and fire them and hire a new contractor to pick up. So no one really knew what the whole building was about, since it was made by so many different people. And he had a whole master plan, and he's like catfishing rich, wealthy women and seducing them and, getting their money. And like, it was so elaborate and so crazy. And you have to keep in mind, like, this is happening in the 1893 World's Fair. It's just like the trouble he went through without the internet to look this shit up.
Yeah.
Right.
So the book that you're talking about, Stu, I think is The Man from the Train.
Man from the Train.
By Bill James.
Yeah, Bill and his daughter. I think his daughter actually did most of the work. I'm not sure.
Rachel McCarthy James. So
yes. And the book that Jenna's talking about is The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson.
Yep.
Hmm.
Like he's a journalist, but what he was able to put together was so impressive that they had it in my college history class.
Oh yeah. It's definitely a history book. Larson spoke at the Creighton University Department of History lecture a couple of years ago, and it's interesting because he won't do a project. He's done now. He has several books in print. I'm not sure I'm 9 or 10. He won't do a project unless he has an archive so rich that he can verify all the detail in the project. Most historians, we've got a little, and we try and piece it together.
Yep.
And sometimes you have to flat out make it up because the details just don't exist. You can only sort of reason what might have happened or was most likely to have happened. He has these crazy little anecdotes in there. I'm like, you had to have made that up. You had to have formulated that, because who would say something that trivial? He's like, no, that was all the documentation. Hmm. And yeah, his books are extremely detailed, extremely well researched.
But it's interesting. It's like this, what is American culture? And then you start getting into the dark folk culture of American history. And, a lot of people think about the East Coast, with Legend of Sleepy Hollow and all of that. But there really is what came afterward in the Midwest. I mean, especially because you do have these random crazy murders and these events that it really is fascinating, I think. Just the things that go bump in the night in the Midwest.
So, Jenna, would you spend the night in the Voliska Axe murder house?
Would I?
Yeah.
No. I just...
not even for the purposes of research?
No.
And you wouldn't go in there with a Ouija board and try to make contact?
I'm good, bro. Good.
I wouldn't pay the money to do it because it's a little on the inside. What was funny was I went to the Voliska Axe Murder House right when it opened back in the early 90s. Mm. And in that case, Darwin Lynn was the guy who had bought it, and he had a little itty bitty sort of dime museum in town for years. Mm-hmm. And he bought it with the express purpose that he was going to open it to the public. And a lot of people in Voliska are very, well, as Bill and John can attest, are very hostile to this idea. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They don't like it. They didn't like it.
And we went in uniform with a paranormal troupe that I go with from time to time, and they wouldn't serve us at the convenience store.
Oh, wow. Because
we were paranormal investigators. It's like, yeah, a lot of the people in the town do not like the whole Voliska house.
Yeah, they probably like it less now. When Darwin was doing it, he focused on, there was no haunting aspect to it at all. He was entirely focusing on the history and the trial, everything about it. And since he has passed, his wife is the one who was running it last time I was there. She said, well, that's all well and good, but the haunting stuff is what pays the bills.
Yeah. Well, that kind of surprises me, John, because you would think that a small town like that would welcome the influx of tourism because they'd be able to sell all kinds of stuff. It'd keep their business, their restaurants running.
Exactly. Why wouldn't they welcome that?
Right. There's probably a number of small towns around the country that would, I guess, sell their souls to have some haunted attraction there that might attract people.
And this is this is like one of the top 10 desired ghost hunts on people's lists. So it's huge. I don't know why the town doesn't embrace it like Roswell did with the UFO. Right. Roswell has become all about UFOs, man. It's like,
well, the UFOs are kind of fun and campy, whereas
little girls and boys getting murdered in their bed.
Yeah, it's not a happy thing that you're embracing. It's like, hey, come and see the murder house.
I would suspect, I know out in Washington State, and I can't think of the town, but the town where like Twin Peaks was shot. Mm-hmm. I was listening to a story probably a couple of years ago how like the high schoolers there would have bad luck that would match the movie that was shot in their minds anyway. And so a lot of times their bad luck's blamed on these folk stories. Mm. that happens later. So I could see a small town if the murder had happened that none of us would care about now, but they'd still blame it on the folkiness that's, because I know that's happened with movies, just from movie sets being they've affected whatever that is, the psyche of the people there.
Snoqualmie.
Yeah, Snoqualmie Falls.
All right, so now let's talk a little bit about some of the streaming stuff. So has anyone other than Linda and I seen Hubie Halloween, the new comedy with Adam Sandler?
What is that? I saw it on, like, I was paging through Netflix for other stuff.
Yeah, I watched it. It's your typical
Adam Sandler.
Bad Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is it, like one of those fun Halloween movies? Like,
yeah,
you get like on either the Family Channel or the Disney Network, where it's Halloween time.
Yeah.
Ernest Saves Halloween.
Right. Yeah. It's your
That
typical.
is a great movie. Don't even.
So
it's your typical. It's your typical dopey, Adam Sandler character that gets picked on by everybody in the town. And he ends up becoming.
And he talks like Adam Sandler.
Yeah, and he ends up
that stupid voice. It's like.
Billy
I'm glad Linda said it.
And he ends up saving the town and becoming the hero kind of a thing, and getting the girl, this beautiful, attractive girl that was recently divorced from the town sheriff, and so it's fun, mindless entertainment. So
it's an Adam Sandler movie.
Exactly. So if you like Adam Sandler, you'll probably love it.
What's interesting, there's got to be a backstory behind this movie, though. I've heard something about Adam Sandler's career over the last 20 years. That after Punch Drunk Love said, okay, here's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life here, is most of my movies are going to basically be vacations.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
I'm going to have an excuse to take my friends usually to Hawaii or Tahiti or Acapulco or someplace where it's a great time to be there, and we're going to make a movie that's going to make enough money to cover our vacation costs and make a profit for the going to the next one.
Right.
And so this one's set up in New England. I'm thinking somebody must have said, you know what, I'd like to take a vacation in New England. I said, okay, we'll make a movie up there.
Yeah. Very
well,
possible.
also let's have fun Halloween time too.
Great scam if you can work it out.
It's definitely not going to be a Halloween classic, but
it's
good.
I
COVID entertainment.
A scam like that.
What's that, Jenna?
I can get behind a scam like that versus a Wall Street scam that causes, thousands of people to lose their retirement.
Right.
If you want to take it that dark, that fast, sure.
So this isn't Halloween Enron, so that's good.
You know what you get yourself into. It's not like an Adam Sandler movie's a surprise.
No. Right. You kind of know what you're getting into when you start it. So, and then the other one that's popular right now on Netflix is The Haunting of Bly House. And
Bly Manor? Or
what's
is it
that?
Bly House? Is it Bly Manor or Bly House?
Bly Manor.
Bly Manor. Sorry, Bly Manor. So I think Linda and I are 5 episodes in already, and it's really good. Very well done, very well acted, very mysterious, a lot of strange things going on, and it's good, creepy stuff without being bloody and gory. So it's kind of
and I'd like to live in that house.
Yeah, it's kind of more of a psychological horror kind of a thing. But yeah, the house is full of different kinds of ghosts. We don't know a lot about them yet. The only thing that we do know that's kind of that you see in the first episode, there's one of the ghosts, is that the little girl that you saw running there in one of the earlier clips Linda showed, she's got like this dollhouse that's almost an exact replica of Bly Manor, and she has all these self-made dolls that she's put in there, and
nothing spooky about that.
No, and but they're not normal dollhouse characters. They're all creepy effigies of different things, and it just looks kind of weird at the beginning, but as you find out, she's got special places that certain figures have to be in, and for certain reasons that become evident later on. So yeah, it's weird. And the last episode we watched, episode 5, was probably the strangest of all. Yeah, there's kind of a close-up picture of the dollhouse and one of the characters on the right there. But yeah, there's all kinds of weird characters in that house. And the weird thing is as at night, as some of the characters are walking through the house, you'll see hints of some of these shadowy characters that she has in the dollhouse in the background. And that makes it even creepier. So yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff going on. The last episode was the strangest one. You'll watch it, and through the whole thing, you're like, what in the F is going on here?
Did you guys watch The Haunting of Hill House?
Yes. Yeah, and I love that too. And this is along the same type of vein.
Well, it's the same. It's the same series, like the same showrunners and a few of the same actors.
Same producer, yeah.
Most horror things don't really actually scare me, but The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
Man, well, I needed to watch some cartoons after that every time.
Yeah, this one's the same type of thing. Go ahead, Stu. Sorry.
The ending of the Haunting of Hill House didn't scare me so much. And I'll bring up why probably later.
Okay. All right. Have you been watching the Bly Manor, Stu?
Yeah, I got that started. I was like, boy, this sure looks like William James. And Linda says, Stu, that's because it's based on William James. I'm like, well, I guess that would be a good reason why it would look like William James.
Yeah. How far are you in?
I'm only like 1.5 episodes in.
Okay.
It certainly appeared to me as though, at the risk of sounding terribly sexist, like as though it was something that was probably aimed a little more at women, a little gentler, more the horror really of child rearing, because as anyone who's spent a lot of his personal time with kids can tell you, those little sons of guns can be pretty scary at times. And
the real monsters were children all along.
And that's why Seth is happening. Yeah.
Right.
And because of the scenery point, I mean, because you will, I agree completely with the settings. You will want to live in that house. That is a beautiful, beautiful.
Right.
Like, if there is anything I learned from a young age, don't trust doll houses, especially old doll houses, because for whatever reason, before I was even middle school, the programming in my English class had us read The Secrets in the Attic, which ended up being like the story about this girl who goes to her aunt's house who has a doll house in the attic that she hasn't taken down since her parents were murdered. And like the things start moving around. They made a movie off of it, and and it's because the ghosts of the murdered grandparents are trying to tell the granddaughter what really happened and where the clues are to their murders. And it's like really dark. And looking back, I'm like, why did they have like pre-middle school kids reading this book?
Right. So Jenna, if you were in an antique store and you saw an old dollhouse, would you buy it?
Depends on how it felt when I touched it. I mean, there are very few things that Sage can't help out, but like,
there's the foyer of the house, the Bly Manor. Yeah.
Take all the sage in the world for that.
Right.
Like, for example, when Aaron and I went down to Louisiana, there was a cedar hope chest in his grandmother's house. And it wasn't even in the house. It was in like the side garage. And this is from New Orleans. And it's an antique, beautiful cedar hope chest. And, his mother said I could have it. And, being a little house on the prairie fan and pioneer days, that was always an essential heirloom for young women is a hope chest,
right,
especially cedar. So I was like, yeah, this would be wonderful. I'd love to have it. And it seemed okay, felt okay. Brought it back, didn't really think much about it. It's still in the garage. And it just wasn't a couple of days. Like Aaron and I just kind of shadows out of the corner of our eyes. Like things. I actually heard footsteps at one point down the hall when he was in the bed with me. Like it started, the house didn't feel the same. Burn some sage. You're not, whatever's here, you're not welcome here. And the house felt fine again. They're just, I think, and it doesn't have to be anything intelligent. I just think sometimes things hold impressions that.
Yeah. One thing that a ghost hunter, any ghost hunter will tell you is never investigate your own house, because what do? You're stuck there. It's like, what if you find something? What do you do? Honestly,
how does sage cleanse a house? What is it about sage that works?
See, that's an interesting thing. I've always wondered about that, because ghost hunters swear by it. I love how it smells. I really do. But it's like, it's an American plant. I
honestly think it's just it's channeling of will and intention. Whatever may be dead, it can't possibly be as powerful as someone who's living. And if you have a method to channel your intention and will and cast something out and command it, because it makes you feel like a placebo. Like if it gives you a placebo to overwhelm whatever is in the house, whether it's real or imagined, or intelligent or not, I think it's that channeling of intention.
You know, Jenna, I've been looking for an explanation for a long time, and that is better than anything I've ever come up with. That is actually very concise. I like that. That works really well.
It says it's can clear up to 94% of airborne bacteria in a space and disinfect the air. It releases negative ions.
It's a strong enough smell for a do-over.
I mean, it could just be ghost allergies.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I do know, like, Plains natives in this area love it a lot for cleansing purposes. In fact, we had a teacher at UNO named that we lovingly called Big Mama, and Big Mama always uses sage, and the security was always following her around because they thought she was smoking marijuana.
Well, I think this actually leads us very naturally into our next topic of the following or breaking the rules of horror stories, which we brought Stu on to talk about. So let's...
Well, that was something, because that's one reason that I liked the show. Don't get me wrong, I love Haunting of Hill House, but towards the end, should I do a spoiler or no?
Well, Haunting of Hill House has been out long enough. I think we can spoil that and get people excited about possibly the next one.
Yeah, I'll leave it. I'll leave it vague, but let's just say they kind of figure out how everything works, and to me, that kind of stops being scary at that point. When we're like, oh, okay, that's how this thing works. Well, once you figure out the rules, well, then it's not scary anymore. That's something you can handle. Horror, I think sort of works on the idea of the unknown. I saw your podcast a couple of weeks ago on H.P. Lovecraft, and that was really the roots of his story, of his horror. Really was that he, as an individual, had a lot of things in his life that he just didn't understand, and he didn't want to understand them because they scared him. I believe his radiator was one of them. He didn't understand how a radiator worked and it scared him. So he wrote a scary story about it because he didn't understand it. And once you start to understand something, then it's like, okay, it stops being, for the most part, stops being real scary and starts becoming more of a challenge.
I have to laugh because then you have to wonder all the elements in which women are terrifying. He doesn't understand how women work, so he writes horror stories about them. Right.
Women, minorities, anything beyond anything outside of his neighborhood, he didn't understand, and so it was all just absolutely horrifying. Anything from India, anything from Africa was all dark and terrible and mysterious because he didn't understand it. It scared the crap out of him. It was H.P. Lovecraft. Katie had a wonderful line about it, which I won't repeat, which is fine. But part of the thing about horror is that it's, people especially people who are coming from sci-fi or fantasy backgrounds, tend to try and put these things in the box. Vampire do this? Can a vampire do that? Does this work? Does that work? How does sage work? How should you do sage? And for the most part, it's sometimes in horror, it's best to leave those sort of things nebulous, because in a sci-fi or fantasy universe, you have entire dictionaries and grammars dedicated to Klingon or Dwarven.
Mm-hmm.
And these are real things. I heard an anecdote from a married couple who met at a con, and he didn't speak Japanese and she didn't speak English. And so for their first few weeks of their relationship, they communicated in Klingon. And that they became, and they're now happily married.
That is the most awesome thing I've ever heard.
That warms the nerdy cockles of my heart.
Yeah.
Wow.
That needs to go on a t-shirt, Seth.
Applause.
That needs to go on as somewhat evidence. There's somebody out there for everybody. You just got to be open to the right scenario.
Exactly. And horror, there are people who will try to put in that kind of a box, but for the most part, a lot of horror films, and horror literature kind of makes up the rules as it goes along. The first Anne Rice novel, Interview with the Vampire, that's the frustration, and this isn't particularly horrifying, but it is what you use. That this new vampire Louis goes through most of the novel, and he doesn't know the rules, and he can't figure out what the hell they are. It's like, why does this work? Why are we this way? And I don't know, and that's very frustrating. And so take a vampire story. If you know all the rules, well, this guy's he's powerless during the daytime. You drive a stake through his heart, that'll kill him. Guards keep him out of room, blah blah. If that all worked perfectly,
Are we
he's really not so scary. Pardon me?
Are we sparkly? Any of the various things
Yeah,
that
exactly.
can be?
Yeah, stuff like that. Well, then it's not scary anymore. It's kind of like COVID. It's kind of like pandemic, kind of like COVID-19. Like, okay, if you wear your mask, you wash your hands, you don't touch your face, you don't be around other people any more than you absolutely have to. And when you do have to, maintain social distance, blah blah blah. It becomes a lot less scary because you know how it works. If you don't know how it scares the crap out of you, then it's a little bit scarier. I'm sorry, Jenna?
That's a perfect example, I think. Like, think about February, March, when COVID, we had no idea what the repercussions are, the long effects, what really protects us, what doesn't, how terrifying it was. And now we know, like, mask work, UV light in the daytime tends to hit it, help. Open air is fine. If you don't have a pre-existing condition, for the most part, you should be fine. Like, there's a lot less fear because of how quickly we were able to find stuff out compared to people in ages past when a new disease would pop up. Not to downplay COVID, because it is not something to be downplayed. It's just the less mystery, obviously, the more manageable it becomes.
Yeah,
mentally.
So,
and a lot of horror film and literature, and finally we're talking more about movies now because that's more the flavor of the podcast. They tend to change the rules a lot, and that's one of the it's almost become a cliche now in vampire movies. Like, hey, you've been watching too much TV, kid. You think you know these rules about vampires. Christopher Lee's vampire movies back in the 60s, the Hammer film, 60s and 70s. They'd invent new crap about that vampire, about him, pretty much every movie that would have some bearing later on. Probably the scariest one, especially considering most of the folks in this group, is this movie called Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, where Dracula gets staked pretty early on. Stake goes right through his heart, and he's goner. And then this priest says to the guy who staked him, "Now you have to pray." He says, "I'm an atheist," and he's already established to be an atheist. I'm like, "I can't pray. I'm an atheist. What are you talking about?" And Dracula looks at him and pulls the stake right out. He says, you can't just be a stake. You also have to invoke the power of God or something to kill the vampire, which has never been mentioned before.
Right.
Yeah, that's something that Star Trek couldn't get away with. That you can't say the dilithium crystals only work if you pray over them. That's not going to work. That's not going to happen. Sci-fi or I don't think really Tolkien probably can get away with that. Like, ring only affects you if you have some sort of predisposition. Like, no, we set the rules to the ring, and you're going to follow the damn thing. In vampire stories, horror stories, no, we're going to break the rules every single time. In the last big real Dracula movie that Lee did, they mentioned early on, oh yeah, the hawthorn tree that provided Christ's crown of thorns is the weakness for the vampire. And so Christopher Lee ends up dying in a shrubbery, which absolutely floored me. You get to Return of the Living Dead, which is the satire sequel of Night of the Living Dead, and they come and say, okay, you destroy the brain, that'll kill him, right? Okay, so the first thing to do is they put a pickaxe right through this zombie's brain. Doesn't do a darn thing. Destroying the brain does nothing whatsoever to these zombies. They just keep on killing. But now they want your brain, which is new. So yeah, in horror, you're just constantly, you don't have the consistency that you have in other genres. You're constantly introducing new things, changing the rules a lot to make it scarier. Like, oh my God, this doesn't hurt this guy. Oh my God, I'm up the creek.
Right. Or you cling to older rules with new reasons why. I like that kind of direction. Let's go like Dracula 2000. As much people want to give it shit with Gerard Butler, to have Dracula actually be Judas, and just how the reason silver works is because he was paid in silver for Jesus's death. He was punished by God. He's a perversion of the Eucharist because of blood. Blood is the life. Like all of that, he is like a twisted version of Jesus, intent on being lonely and suffering because of what he did. That was an interesting twist on a traditional movie and rules.
Oh yeah, I just got this new one. I emailed Bill about this. Well, it's not new. The movie's 60 years old, but I saw it. This is the first horror movie I ever remember seeing. And I stayed up when I was probably about 10 years old, had a TV in my own little room, and it was my local station was starting to play classic horror movies again. Like, oh, good, I get to see these. I was like 10 years old, loved it. And there was a movie called Curse of the Undead. And so vampire western from 1959. And at the time, this struck me as absolutely ridiculous. So I didn't even finish. I'm like, oh, what the heck is this thing? And then years later, I saw it again. And I'm like, well, hey, this is actually a pretty unique take on things, because by that time, then I knew more about vampire folklore. And this is the vampire is someone who becomes a vampire in a more folkloristic way. He's a suicide. And in folklore, that's one of the top 10 ways to become a vampire, is to do something along those lines. So he's someone who committed suicide. He can walk in daylight, but he usually doesn't, because in the movie it hurts my eyes. So you don't see him anymore. But he's not allergic to the daylight.
Right.
And there's no bats. There's nothing terribly supernatural about his behavior. Except the normal Bill isn't going to kill him. So people get the drop on him and shoot him first, and he's boom. So he's this invincible gunfighter because Bills don't kill him. And it really is a heck of a take on vampire folklore. It's a very flawed. It's a super low budget, and it's the commentary said, I wouldn't have noticed this, but you look out the western swinging doors of the saloon, and you're looking into a hallway. They didn't even bother to backlight it to make it look like you're looking to the street. You're looking into literally a hallway. So yeah, it's changing the rules. It's a heck of a take.
But it's interesting that some of the rules don't seem to stick. So in other words, when you think about vampires, there's certain rules that we have all come to accept, right? They can't go out in daylight. They can be killed with a stake through the heart. They can't be seen in a mirror. There's things like these that seem to be passed down from way back, right? But then there's what's that?
And Twilight got rid of every one of those.
Yeah.
The state doesn't work. They can walk around daylight all they want. Those
are not vampires. Those are something else.
But so So at what point does something get introduced in the lore of a vampire or a werewolf or something like that? That what is it about something that gets introduced that maybe then sticks and then becomes an avid part of the legend going forward? Because I'm assuming that all of these things that we take for granted about vampires now didn't all start at the beginning, right? They were introduced gradually over time, and they've become kind of an accepted core belief of what a vampire is. But new stuff that you see happening, like with the Twilight series or other shows, you don't seem to see a lot of that sticking and becoming permanent. And maybe it has to do with copyright issues where, they own the rights to this whole glittery vampire thing, right? And somebody else can't take that and move on. Maybe that's it. I don't know if you know, Stu, but.
And then some stuff. No, I think it kind of goes back to aesthetics. Like, what is going to make something stick? Like the whole sunlight, disintegrating a vampire thing.
Yeah,
that's not in any folklore at all,
right?
And that's not in any Victorian literature. That starts in the movies. Mm-hmm. It starts in Nosferatu, and it's part of really actually a much longer ritual than that. And then it gets taken up in the 40s when by that time you have the production code in, they aren't going to allow people to show stakes through the heart anymore. Mm. And so they say, we'll have to think of a more antiseptic way of killing the vampire. That's when they bring in the sunlight. The sun hits and they just dissolve into a skeleton, and you get away from that. That's the way to get away with to get past the censors. Mm. In terms of like what's going to stick, what's going to hit, but I think it's up to that's part of the enchantment of the writers. What's going to enchant the audience and be something that becomes memorable. And sometimes it's something stupid. Like anybody who talks about a Romero style vampire today hasn't going around like, I'm going to eat your brains like that. If you read the Sense and Sensibility and Vampires, the combination of Jane Austen and Sense and Sensibility and Zombies, that's right. Combination of Jane Austen's and zombie books. They're all about, the zombies eat brains. That's one movie. Mm-hmm. But it was so, it hit, so
it stuck.
It had such an impact that it stuck. Mm-hmm. It's like, who knows what's going to stick?
Yeah. That's the thing I find fascinating.
I would still argue that Stephenie Meyer making these quote unquote vampires, like they're more like fae. I feel like she was trying to create something, but because of whatever her background in literature and upbringing it was, instead of just making it something else, she chose an easy avenue and calling the vampires, even though they have the characteristics of so many other types of supernatural creatures.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially because in folklore, at least, that's what I'm more attracted to, obviously. Vampires exist to be hunted. A vampire is what happens when you've got a problem. Yeah, it's something you don't understand. When people are dying in your village or in your community, and you need to do something, you're like, well, what's my scapegoat? What can I do? It's like, oh, it's the last guy who died. Let's go after the vampire. Vampires exist to be hunted and killed. That's their role in folk culture. And Fire series, humans just aren't a threat anymore. Their vampires are just too powerful.
And so it's great that they show Linda just flashed those.
What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, What We Do in the Shadows. Sorry, I'm having an issue with titles today. What really impressed me from the get-go of that series is like the older vampires still looked like what they were back in the day, because obviously you die as a vampire and you're preserved. So the guys who are from the ancient times, their teeth aren't right. They're kind of like gnarled. Their bodies aren't in good shape. So they're not attractive because the time period they come from, they wouldn't be attractive now.
Right.
Like some of the newer ones can get away with it or hide it, or, maybe dress in modern clothes. But like some of the more ancient ones, they're almost animalistic, and they probably wouldn't be able to go out among people.
Are there any other horror films that are out right now that you guys are watching? Or
so Shudder, I broke down and I got it, and it's just for the price. If you love horror films, it's really good. They have a series going on right now called Cursed Films. and they talk about all the movies that, like, an episode for each movie that's got cursed backstories, such as, you know, Poltergeist or The Exorcist, like all of those. So if you're a horror movie fan and you've heard bits and pieces about haunted movie sets like Charles brought up, like this is a good series to get into and hear more about like that.
Well, new for Halloween, something that just came out on Netflix that isn't really my cup of tea, but something that some of our listeners may enjoy. There's a movie called, what's it called? Vampires versus the Bronx that is debuted on Netflix. And it's really a vacation. These very white aristocratic vampires move into this just to a black neighborhood in the Bronx, and it's about, you know, what's that community going to do to get rid of these intruders before they ruin the place.
Is it a comedy or serious?
It's essentially a comedy, yes.
Okay.
So when I first heard that title, I thought that maybe that was going to be, do you guys remember A Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy?
I was about to bring that up. I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
That was a great movie. I enjoyed that as a vampire movie. I thought it was a great spin. And no, now that you describe Vampires versus the Bronx, like that's an even more interesting gentrification, because gentrification is sucking out the life of what it was to make it something new.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a Vampire in Brooklyn since high school almost. I want to watch that again, see if it still holds up.
So it's from Wes Craven, so you can have a little faith in that it holds up somewhat well. And then it was made in 1995. So I was in 5th grade, so you would have been in 7th grade, I think, Seth. So yeah, it's been around for a hot minute.
So there's a new game that came out that I like that's based on The Thing. It's called Carrion. And you play in the game, you play the role of The Thing going through this facility and impersonating and eating and growing your biomass to eventually escape.
Is that a board game or a video game?
It's a video game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it can squick you out too. It's got the movement of the creature is all it's shooting tendrils out to drag itself through these corridors and tunnels, and all the scientists they'll scream as you drag them into your maw. It's quite amusing.
Huh.
Which goes back to this entire fear of the unknown, by the way, because The Thing is, one of these movies that straddles sci-fi and horror, but that's one of the scariest movies out there. I mean, and it's a scary concept to think, my God, here's my best friend, my coworker for 5 years is standing right next to me, and this guy could be something entirely different who wants to kill me right now. That's absolutely terrifying.
So an older video game, if Seth's going to bring up video games, but it's like one of the best horror movies in timelines, I think, even though it's a game, is Amnesia, The Dark Descent. Amnesia, The Dark Descent. It was so good and it was so terrifying at times that me and my neighbors, when I was living in Dallas in grad school, we would take turns. Someone would play and the rest of us would sit on the couch and watch. Because the storyline was so good. And what it is you wake up in this house and you don't have any memory of your backstory, what you're doing. You're trying to find clues to what's going on. And there's something that comes at you if you have the light on, like a candle light or whatever light. So you have to turn it out. But if you turn out the lights, you start to go insane more and more. And that will kill you. So it's you have to balance going insane versus keeping the light on and attracting whatever is going on and lurking in the house that's trying to seek you out. And depending on the choices you make, the ending will vary.
Well, John had sent me some EVPs, electronic voice phenomenons, that he got from the ghost hunting stuff that he's involved in. The interesting thing is when you see this stuff on TV, at least to me, what bothers me about it is they air these recordings, but they always subtitle them so that you're reading what you're supposed to be hearing there. And of course, the brain is a pattern matching machine. So if you're given a heads up as to what you're supposed to hear, then pretty much that's what you're going to hear. So I thought we'd play a few of these. I've changed the file names to just be numbers so that it doesn't say what you're supposed to hear in there. And I thought I'd play a couple of these and see if anybody can tell me what you think you hear. So
First of all, we should probably explain what an EVP is.
Go ahead, John.
Electronic voice phenomena. It is something on an audio that shouldn't be there. Perhaps
But nobody else heard when they were in the room.
And that's just it. It's like you're gonna hear these. There's a number of these EVPs that I gave to you, and it's like literally, you're gonna hear it and say to yourself, "Well, wasn't that someone that was there?" It's like, no. And it's like, how do I know? Because I'm the one that recorded this. And I know who was there. And so there's a subjective element to all EVPs. And you're also, if we listen to these, you're going to have varying opinions on the interpretation, on what it's actually saying. So, but you're going to start with number one.
Yeah. So let's start with number one here. What I'll do is let me share this.
Grew up in the 60s, and so we didn't have cool stuff.
Yeah.
Anybody hear anything?
Just somebody talking about the 60s. That's what I heard.
Somebody move a jacket or something.
You want to play 6.5 to 7.5 again, Bill? Or yeah. That is the EVP. That was not there.
Like, honestly,
somebody
it was
saying,
so loud and so distinct. It sounded like whoever was talking before was pausing and saying, so, like about to say something else.
Uh-huh.
Or
Well.
if you know.
It was kind of like an echo.
I heard bellow.
Oh,
I'll
wow.
play it from the beginning again. Let's see what.
Grew up in the 60s, and so we didn't have cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, given the context of the rest of the conversation, it's almost like someone's like, yeah, I didn't have cool stuff in the 60s. And there's a confirmation. No.
Right.
Do you want to play the amplified part?
Sure.
Yeah, it sounds just like a voice, but I know for a fact that voice was not there.
John,
I think it says fell.
fell.
It sounds more like hello now that it's
And that's one of the interesting things about EVPs is that they're very subjective. People hear different things. They do.
Right. Let's pull up the next one. Let's see. I'm going to skip to number 5.
This one's a little, if you'll notice, like it's very flat, which means this one was weird. I was not expecting to hear any sounds in this because of how flat the sound bars are, but there is something here.
All right.
Did you hear it?
Yeah, that was a feminine.
Yeah. You want to amplify just that? You want to hit just that part, Bill?
Yeah.
See, to me, that sounds more like meow,
Yeah.
meow.
Do you
Like-
want to try the amplified versions now?
Sure.
So yeah, that still sounds kind of like something going zoom. Yeah, that still sounds kind of like something going.
With
It
headphones
sounds a
on?
little bit like they're saying, get out of here.
with headphones on, it sounds a lot different, kind of, but it's like what it sounds like to me is I died alone. So
I didn't get that.
well, I know
Yeah.
you're not wearing headphones, are you?
Yeah,
Well,
but
I'm wearing headphones, and I wouldn't.
I
have
am, and
gotten
I
that
got what
from it.
Seth got.
I wouldn't have picked
Yeah.
up anything from that. Just
Subjective.
yeah.
It-
All right. So I died alone is what you're supposed to hear. Let's play it.
That's not really
Dan?
what it's like. Seth's rights, Stu's rights, I'm right, everyone's right. These are all. That's the trick of EVPs is that they're open ended and incredibly interpretive.
Yeah.
It's people hear what they hear, and it's like and no one's wrong.
Right.
Like,
Then
I don't
is it
wanna hear
anything though?
Right.
What?
Is it anything if everyone's right?
It is something.
Is there any significance to it, though?
Is
I think
there? It's like there's no question involved. If this is something saying something, then it seems like a weird little standalone thing. Can you do the one right before that?
Yeah.
Four?
Number 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one should leave very little room for error. Yeah, this one is very.
Are you Carolyn? That's communicating with us? Are you Carolyn? That's communicating with us?
So
This
is
sounds
that,
like background noise.
You want to emphasize the part where it's at?
yeah, where is it at? I can't
It's
tell.
I think it's between 6 and 7. There it is. Right there.
It's like somebody's talking outside the window or outside the
Yeah.
area. It just sounds like background noise.
You wanna do the emphasize part? Or do that, yeah.
That's right.
It was like a bird or something.
No, or like a small child or something.
Try the amplified version. That one's really simple. That one's high.
I was say, okay.
Yeah, I was hearing 2 words. I was hearing that's right. That's right.
Yeah. It almost sounded to me like a dog starting to bark.
So here's what's interesting about, at least from my perspective. To us, it sounds like stuff that, no matter what people are hearing, we're hearing something. But John is telling us that when he's there, that noise is not there.
That noise is not
And
there.
that's
I
to
guarantee
me
you.
fascinating.
Every one of these sounds is not there when we are there. So yeah, we don't hear these until later. It's
Because I'm
like
sure you all note to yourselves, like, okay, we heard something outside here at this time. We heard something out there at that time.
yeah, we are
cross-reference with the
very
videos later, just in case there's ambience.
we're very meticulous about taking notes about all the things that okay, you'll notice we're talking, and that's fine. We always tell people never whisper, because whisper is when things you can talk all you want. We can tell the difference between talking and EVPs, but it's like these things are there and they're not audible at the time. Do you want to? This one was freaky. You want to try 1, 2, 3?
Okay.
This one freaks me out a bit.
It's a place down by my work. It's a place down by my work. It's a place down by my work. It's a place down by my work.
Do you hear it?
That's creepy as fuck.
There's something screaming.
It just sounds like somebody breathing.
No, it sounds like a
like
scream.
To me, it sounds like a very deep inhale, like a COVID inhale, really.
Well, it's like all the way from the very beginning of the bulge, between 0 and 1, yeah, to the end to the middle.
That's
where
what she said.
where it pinches off.
It's a place. It's a place.
I still hear
Don't
breathing.
listen to the guy's voice. Listen.
Yeah, I'm not. It just sounds like a rasp to me.
Yeah, breathing.
Yeah.
I think I hear what you're talking about. It sounds a little bit like, kind of like you're hearing a crowd yell in the back, like a.
Yeah,
Like,
almost
I was
like
thinking crows. like it almost sounds like a crow, that loud cawing that a crow would do as if it's outside a window.
It's a place. It's a place. It's a place.
What it kind of sounds like to me is like something being like the planing of wood. Like, you know, you take a plane and you shave a bit of wood off. That's what that noise sounds like to me.
Well, I can guarantee you there was no one planing wood.
Or maybe somebody sliding around on a chair or a bench or something, maybe.
No, it was too high pitched for that.
Or something being dragged across the microphone is what I was getting, honestly.
Is what?
I don't even know where my microphone is on this machine, but you know, when you drag something across a microphone, you sort of hear that.
Yeah, true.
Nothing got dragged across the microphone.
It's a place. It's a place. It's a
Yeah, I definitely
Also
don't hear
kind
any words in that.
Like
Oh no,
maybe,
there weren't.
maybe a
no
shoe
words.
being drug across concrete.
No.
There was no concrete. This was in an office.
No, I didn't get like shoe on concrete or anything like that. Like it sounded organic, like a trill almost of an animal.
Do you want to try number 2?
Okay.
Is there anybody at all that would like to give us a message tonight? Is there anybody at all that would like to give us a message tonight? Is there anybody at all that would like to give us a message tonight?
Heartbeat?
So there's something here at the end.
Yeah, I know, and it's like, to me it sounds like Connie or Tammy. Actually, if you go to this amplified, the last amplified one, that's that one.
See, that one is the one that most sounds like a voice to me so far.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't anyone that was there. I would guarantee you, but it's like, did you hear the rumbling?
Yeah, sounds like a
this
heartbeat.
almost sounded like a machine or something to me.
It did. It sounded like a machine or like a little push cart.
And that sound wasn't there?
No, it was not.
Because that's fucking loud.
I know it is. And it freaked me out when I was listening to it. It's like, because I was there when this was recorded. And that sound was not there.
It sounds to me like students up and downstairs, like during high school, like the passing time when everyone's trying to get downstairs in high school. That's what it sounds like.
I don't know why you're talking about high school, but
you know, here's the thing that kind of makes
time, like the passing when the bell rings and you're trying to get between classes, it's got the sound and the chaos of people trying to move between.
This was at 2 a.m. So no.
And we're guessing not, but that's like,
you know,
how loud it
I
is.
swear to God, that sound was not there. And inside the whole building, there was like us, and it's like there was about 5 of us. So
that's crazy.
And here's something that I think about when I listen to these two is that, you know, I've got those Nest cameras out around my house, right? And they have the night vision mode on them. And so a couple of the cameras kind of overlap their view in such that one camera can see the other camera. Now, when I'm out there at night looking around, the cameras just look like objects sitting there. But if I turn on and I look at one camera's view, I will see a bright light, the night vision imaging being sent out from the other camera. So it's almost like a flashlight. But yet when I'm out there in person, I don't see that. And so I have to wonder if some of these electronic devices that are recording this are picking up sounds that are maybe not picked up by the human ear.
The other thing is this wave interference is a real thing with sound. I mean, I remember doing sound cancellation experiments in physics.
And so that would also be dependent upon where you were and also where the recording device was, right?
Well, there can be a sound going on in the room and your head's in a position where you're not able to hear it, and it can be awfully loud, but you're not hearing it. but 6 inches over the mic or somebody else, they are hearing it. And
Or it can even be 12 inches over. It could actually be even more amplified.
Yeah.
Right?
Play that rumbling again, because I mean I dig where you're coming from, but whatever made that sound, it wasn't in the room.
Well, yeah, but if you look, I think
because those peaks are about peaking where the voice level was. I should have heard that.
Well, I'm not. Well, here's the thing. I'm not entirely sure on this because sound's not my thing.
Well, no, that's another thing I wanted to bring up. I know a sound engineer, and I asked him about EVPs, and he was like, "Don't bother me with EVPs." I spend most of my time trying to get this crap out of the
well, right.
So it's
but I believe when you get away. So like, when I was a younger man, me and my little brother made holograms in my mother's basement. You know what a hologram is, right? Is you record the interference pattern of light,
right?
And then when you shine new light on it, the film is actually recorded an interference pattern. You get an image that's, well, it's not on the film anymore. It's recreated it. And I believe with sound, you can get an additive and a subtractive effect from sound waves that in certain spots would sound entirely different than what you'd expect. So like you and I could be talking, but there could be a spot in the corner there where we sound like birds chirping or something, because of the way the sound adds up.
True, but no, not this time. And the only reason I can say that is because I was there. I mean, and it's like, it's not some weird audio trick. For the most part, the office was like loaded with sound deadening stuff. It's like,
but where were you in relation to the microphone or the recording device?
I was right next to it. I was in a chair.
Yeah.
Because I remember the voice of the person you're hearing talking to was sitting at the desk that I was sitting next to at the desk, and the microphone, the digital recorder is on the desk. So
do you ever do these things with multiple recorders placed around the room?
Oh, yeah. I didn't do that with this one. This was like one of my earliest hunts.
I wouldn't have it on the desk either. You might also be getting an effect just because sound travels at a different velocity through objects.
What objects, though?
The desk and the microphone itself.
But
it's like when you put your ear down to a desk and knock on it, it's gonna sound.
That, but it's like, I don't know what would cause that particular kind of noise, and I don't. But it's like it is.
It'd be fun to create it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So
to see if I could like recreate that, but it literally sounds like one of those like push trucks, like that you load. You load things like mail up and you push it around, and it's clacking on like tile, but there's no tile there. I don't know what would cause the clicking. The chunka. I have no idea.
So I think what I'd like to have is like talk to somebody who really knows their stuff about audio, because I mean, so we have this, but saying, well, I don't know what else it could be, so it has to be a ghost is kind of like Stu just made a face.
I didn't say it was a ghost.
That's the classic argument from ignorance. I don't know if God or ghost or what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
I really don't know what it is, but I do know. I know that I know what was there.
Yeah, there is something that I will bring in here. Is I don't mean this to be. Please take this in a loving spirit here, but there are experiments done with perception, where people will be focusing on one thing, be utterly oblivious to something else that's going on in the same range of vision, sight, and hearing. The classic is, and you can find these YouTube videos where they say, okay, here are 5 people just playing a simple ball game, just throwing the ball to each other. Count the number of times the ball is thrown, and see if you come to the same answer that we did. And so you watch, you count very carefully the number of times the ball is thrown, and at the end they say, okay, Now watch that video again without and don't even pay attention to the ball. And a good 2/3 or more of the people who do this realize that they didn't even notice a gorilla walking through the video playing ball, because they are focused on people playing ball. So when your attention is somewhere else, you won't even hear or see something that's going on sometimes. So you can say, listen, I was right there and that didn't happen.
Yeah, especially if you're in a conversation engaged with someone, thinking about what they're saying, you could easily overlook a background sound without realizing it.
There were
I
two
would
other
think
people there, and they didn't hear this either.
But they were engaged in the conversation, right? There, you guys are carrying on conversation and talking, and you're listening to each other and thinking about what each other is saying.
Play it one more time.
It's freaking loud, like Jenna said. It's freaking loud.
I know.
I would have noticed that, and it's like I something like shuffled through there. Not. It sounds mechanical.
It does.
It does.
It's like, I don't know what it is, but I swear to God, there was nothing. We had nothing that would make that sound.
It would be interesting because there are so many variables you have to take into account. Like if you had there on site an audio specialist, a median that's been verified as much as any median or psychic ability person who claims that can be verified, who says they have the extrasensory perception, and then someone who's been in extremely dangerous situations consistently that involved life or death, like a veteran, because then they're not going to be emotional, and they've been in actually legitimately terrible situations that unless an environment truly is dangerous, they're probably not going to have a sensory, like their mind's not going to start making shit up because they know what's really feels bad and really is dangerous versus it's just dark and the little human animal in me recognizes that this could be a threat and something could be in there. Because I feel like there is a distinction. There's the thing that happens, you get scared because I think the animal looks at an environment and says, I'm invulnerable because it's dark, it's quiet, mind plays tricks on you. And people who have been actually in bad situations so many times, their mind doesn't play those tricks.
But we didn't hear it when it was going on.
What?
I'm just saying, I'm not saying this situation specifically. I'm just saying if you were to create a situation where you had a lot of different ways to measure the environment and different people with sensory perceptions of experiences, because the way someone perceives an environment who has been in legitimate danger versus a median versus someone who is curious and trying to find answers, everyone's going to read the environment differently.
Hey, Bill.
And their input afterward would be fascinating.
We did have
last one again.
What's that?
The mechanical one. Can you play the one that everybody says sounds mechanical again?
Yeah.
We had a 20-year police veteran with us. He was one of the investigators.
Well, yeah, that doesn't mean anything to me. So I found an article here. It's from the Khan Academy, actually. But beats and interference of sound waves, and the gist is you can create alternating soft and loud sounds heard from two different sound waves of different frequencies interfering. So it'll sound like a drum beat, loud beat, soft beat, loud beat, soft beat, which is exactly what I'm hearing there. So, and it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be the same frequency as the other sounds in the room. It's just something that happens.
It's just an effect of the technology.
Yeah, or whatever's, or the two voices interfering with each other, or.
And we can post the link along with everything else, like in the description. So when
there's not much to this. I was just saying that there's
that is a possibility.
Yeah, with the sound stuff.
See, I'm not. I never said this stuff was ghosts. In fact, I do believe I explained that I talked to a sound professional who actually spends most of his days trying to get this kind of crap out of his stuff. So it's
and that's a big deal out here. The guys in the engineering department in Lincoln tends to be really big on the sound stuff.
So you're saying, John, that sound engineer you talked to, was he having a lot of people send him this type of stuff? And he was.
Yeah, he was more into UFOs than paranormal, but he came to some of the meetings we had when we had them. And it's like, he's like, I wanted him to listen to some of this stuff. He said, don't bother. It's like there's sound junk that just shows up.
Yeah.
And it's like, I had the distinct impression that some of that sound junk ruined perfectly good recordings that he was trying to fix.
Yeah.
He was mad about it. It's like, so yeah, don't make me listen to this crap. I spend my professional life trying to clean this crap up. So
Huh. Interesting.
Oh yeah, if you ever get I don't know if they still do them or not. Like I toured the Holland here in Omaha.
Yeah.
And they have those sound tiles and the chairs and the wood, and they went through all sorts of modeling
To try to cut down the possible interference and
Yeah, and I don't know if it worked or not because I don't have that kind of ear for things, but I know that's what you see the weird tiles all around the hall, and that's what it was all computer generated to cut down on interference.
Charles's idea is just as good as any other, because I mean, I don't think there's like a ghost pull cart going through UNO. So
right. Well, so I think the point is, go into this kind of stuff with a healthy degree of skepticism and, research a lot of other possibilities, whether
the subjective nature of them. The fact that you guys all heard different things shows just how, this, what I heard is what I heard.
Yeah, sure.
What you heard. And it's like, once you heard what you heard, that's what you hear.
Yeah.
And I heard what I heard for whatever reasons, and that's what I hear. So that's kind of how I labeled them for you, Bill.
Yeah.
But it's like, obviously, it's like these are extremely subjective things, which means kind of like, I guess Seth's like, are they anything? If they're everything, can they be anything?
Right.
But it's like, yeah, I don't think I'm experiencing, the other side, especially since none of these make any sense.
What John's, EVPs demonstrate is that there's a lot of fun to explore the paranormal. It's always good to have healthy skepticism and, just always be open to, evaluation and critique. And like this discussion is great because if everyone comes to the end of something and then, there's something there, even if we don't know what it is, like it's always good to share and, our experiences.
The other
Right.
I had this kind of might sum up a little bit. I knew a guy that he was laying in bed one day and he saw a rat run across the floor, and he kind of looked for it, couldn't find it, and then a few days later he saw another rat, and he got an exterminator, and they never found any rats. And then one day he saw a rat run up the wall, and it kept going like that, like every so often, and it turned out, rather than him being haunted by rats, that he had a scratch on his retina.
Oh.
That every so often the light would hit it and he'd see a rat.
That's kind of sad.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard a worse story than that the other day. That's why I thought I thought we were talking about the same story, Charles.
No.
The story I heard was this guy he went on Reddit saying, "What's the best way to get rid of ants? Because I just can't get rid of them. They're just everywhere." And people have the usual, well, make sure you get all the sugar taken care of and traps this, exterminator that. And then one person said, apropos of nothing, check out your carbon monoxide levels.
Oh, carbon monoxide. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Every time I go on a ghost hunt, I take a carbon monoxide meter with me.
Mhm.
Because that'll cause really intense hallucinations right before it kills you.
Mhm. All right. Well, we'll post a lot of these, some links on our website to different areas where you can go and look for more research on this type of stuff, as well as some links to some of the area attractions we talked about earlier.
But also on that, don't let that be an annual reminder, change your carbon monoxide detector.
There you go. That's right. Good point, Jenna.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Galactic Driftwood Podcast. Definitely want to thank our special guest, Stu, for showing up.
Thanks, Stu.
Yay.
Thank you for having me. It's always
You're
a pleasure.
welcome.
And thanks to John for the EVPs. That was a fun change of pace. And
Yeah, it
getting
was.
to
It was
see
nice
your
to
effect,
listen to that and just
hearing more of your work.
Yeah, it was a good experiment just to see what people heard. And it just goes to show you when you're watching these ghost shows on TV and they put the little closed captioning at the bottom as to what they heard on this thing. It's sort of,
And I always hated that they put that label, because that does poison it. It's like,
right.
I was kind of expecting no one to actually have the same interpretation, because that's what always happens.
Right.
No one ever gets the same interpretation.
Well,
I used to take it personally, but I don't anymore because, I mean, it's kind of fascinating in and of itself that these things are 100% subjective.
Right.
and
All
welcome back to Jenna. Thanks
Yes,
for
and we're glad to
coming
have
back.
Jenna back as well.
Oh.
Yay. So,
Yay.
all right, well, check us out online. Our website's galacticdriftwood.space. We're on YouTube. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Play, Stitcher, Spotify. We're pretty much everywhere you want to be. So check
And
us out.
Nation.
And SynNet Nation.
SYN.
Sinnation.net.
Yeah, that's one of those. We'll post the link. All right. Well, thank you all again, and we'll catch you next time where we're sure to have some more exciting discussion. So take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.